Assalamu alaikum. We'll just start today's lecture. So this is a continuation of the chapter, Functions and Arrays. Today's main objectives will be learning about local, global variables. Local variables, we should be using it for quite some time now. But the global variables, I'm going to introduce it today because we need this concept when we introduce 2D arrays with functions. Now we know 2D arrays, right? We have introduced the 2D array. It's a table. It's a data structure where we can store lots of data in tabulated format. Set of rows, set of columns. So this is my 2D structure. And we know for any table, we need the number of rows and the number of, very good. Okay, so that would be my data structure. We would like to learn today how to pass this to functions. Can we use 2D arrays with functions? We have used 1D arrays with functions. And this would be our ultimate goal at the end. So let's start by introducing first local global variables quickly. We will come to this subject again. But what do we mean by a local variable? What do we mean by a global variable? And why do we need them? That should be always the question that we should, why we are learning this material. Now look at this sample program that we have been using for some time. Y is a variable that is declared within the block. Which block? So we say that Y is local variable to. Why we say local? Because it belongs to and only main. Now, the scope of Y is main. So Y, local variable to main block. Meaning, Y only known in this scope. So if I go to function F1, for example, and I say here, see out Y, would that be acceptable? We will get error, undeclared variable, because the variable is not known to me. It is known only to main. What are the local variables that belong to F1? So how many local variables we have in F1? 2. And we say that they are local to F1. So local variable to F1 function. Local variables too. So a local variable is a variable that is declared within a certain specific scope, and that scope usually a block. The block, we refer to it as we know a function. A function is a block. On the other hand, we have some variables that we did not see before. They are called the global. And global means what? From the keyword, and global means what? Huh? Something general, something known everywhere, something common to all of them. So the opposite of local would be a global. Local معناها limited scope. A global, very general scope. So a global variable is a variable that is known in the file, the entire file, okay, to all functions, blocks. That's the meaning of a global variable. So a variable that is declared and can be accessed from any block in my program, in my file, is called a global variable. So you don't have to repeat declaring this variable. Khalas, it is known. You can access that file. The question where to place such a global variable. How to make it global? Now we know these are local within parameter list or inside the block. If you declare within a parameter list, it's a local variable. If you declare within the block, it's a local variable. How to make it global? We move it above main. So look at this one, int a. If you see such declaration statement above main, outside any one of the blocks that we have, of the functions, immediately the system, the compiler will understand that this A is a global variable, meaning I can access it from anywhere. I can access it from anywhere. So if you are in main and you do cout A, would this be accepted? Would this be accepted? Yes. If I do it from F1, would this be accepted? Yes, because it's known to me. A global variable can be accessed from anywhere in your file, from anywhere in any of the blocks that you have inside the file. So that's called a global variable. So now we have the notion of local variable versus global variables. Global variables are usually declared above main, and usually they are done so that we can use them or refer to them from anywhere in your program. Whereas for local variables, there are variables that are declared within a specific block, and they have limited scope within that block only. We like local variables. We also sometimes need global variables. Okay? So that's the first thing we need to learn before we move to functions and to the arrays. As we recall, when we used to declare 2D arrays, let's do it here. Integer A, or call it marks to have it more specific to our application. Integer marks 10, 5. This is a local 2D structure. This 2D structure called marks has a number of rows. How many rows do we have here? How many columns? Whenever we have a 2D array and we would like to fill it with data or print the content, then we need what type of loops? Nested loops. Very good. Nested loops. Now, these two dimensions, we said either we can set them directly or rather introduce rows and columns. Okay. So what I would like to do, I would like to call this as we have done before, rows, columns. Okay. But I would like to declare both of these constants. So constant, integer, rows equals to, and constant, columns. Very good. Now, we can use these two constants anywhere inside my program, and that can facilitate using functions with 2D arrays. That's why we need the global variables. Okay. Now, the question would be, if I am going to write a function that requires one of its parameters as a 2D array, are there any remarks, notes that we have to keep in mind? Like what we have done with 1D? Now, with 1D, we said whenever you pass a 1D array to a function, it will be dealt with as a call by reference. So that's the first. And that also applies to 2D arrays. So whether it's 1D or 2D, if you look at that note there, a 2D array parameter is dealt with as a call by reference. Call by reference. The second note that we have done with 1D arrays, Whenever you pass an array to a function, you have to pass with it the size. Now, if you would like to do that, you could, because a 2D array has a bigger size than a 1D array. If you would like to set the size, then you would talk about 2 dimensions, rows and columns. So either you pass them to the function, or maybe better than that, declare them as, so if you have them global, you don't need to pass them, and therefore you can refer to them every time. Okay? That's why global variables become very handy when it comes for passing arrays, 2-dimensional arrays to functions. So that's the second note we have to keep in mind. So first, it's a call by reference, meaning that if it changes inside the function, then the changes will be reflected in the caller block, اللي هو main. Second, the size could be passed as 2 separate parameters, or we could make them global, and in this case, we don't have to exchange these parameters between the function and main. One specific remark with 2D only, not applicable to 1D, whenever you declare your 2D structure in the prototype statement as well as the definition, the function definition, then the second dimension must be set to a value. You cannot just keep it empty. You have to set it to a value. Look, مثلا, I have void get data, and I would like to declare my parameters. Now let's use this data structure, marks. Get data. So if this is a prototype statement, we should tell here the data type of that parameter. So what do I need to write? Integer. My data structure is an integer table with how many dimensions? 1, 2. If the compiler sees such a statement, such parameter declaration, it knows for sure that this is a 2D array. Other type. What would happen if I only type one subscript notation? This is a 1D array. And what would happen if I have none? A variable, a value. So from the prototype statement, as we learned before, we can tell what type of parameter do we have. Is this a value, a single value? Is it a 1 dimension? Or is it a 2D array? Now let's look here. We know that the 2D array is a call by reference by default. We need to pass the size, or we may use it as a global. Okay? In this case, I'm using it as a global. Third one says the second dimension. Which dimension is 1? Column. What should we do with it? We should specify it to a value. Tell me how many columns do I have? And this is to be done where? In the prototype statement as well as function definition. This is a prototype statement. So what should I write here? For our marks, columns, if this was global. Or you just type 5 if you don't have it global. Is it clear? Okay? So that's basically what we need to keep in mind when it comes for using a 2D array. Other than that, it's basically similar to any other structure like 1D array or variables when we use functions. I would like to do an exercise which we have done before, but without functions. Today, we would like to convert our program into functions. And as we know, whenever we use functions, it's a matter of reorganizing your file, reorganizing your program so that you have it precise, concise, you have the major steps, and each one of these tasks or steps will be detailed in a function. Okay? So today, in our exercise which we have done, when we took the 2D array 2 weeks ago. We need to get data, step, display data or marks. These are the major steps I would like to do. Then we could do, after printing, find average, okay, or compute how many students scored 10. You remember this example? How many students scored 10? And maybe compute student average, a specific student average. Okay? So this will be the 4 functions that we are going to do for this exercise. And hopefully by doing all of them, we will see how to use a call by reference, how to use the global variables for the columns and rows, how to use void and return valued functions, okay? And then finally, how to make use or to easily modify, copy, paste, and add more tools to your program. As we said, the whole exercise is about converting our program into a program that becomes more clearer. The steps are clear. I can add more tasks, more functions, or I can modify some of these without affecting the other functions. Functions is about software engineering, how to re-engineer your program so that it becomes easier to read, it becomes easier to modify and update, and also easier to scale. Yani scalability is one of the properties that we are after, which is, can we enlarge it? Can we shrink it without affecting the other modules? Yes, we could do that. So let me open the file, which we have implemented before and converted based on functions.